And the gates are open, ladies and gentlemen. Soap Pump Monday afternoon. It's 4 o'clock here in Sydney. And I've got with me, of course, Nick Georges, one of the senior people of Wingman. And I also have with me Gavin Rubinstein, who I've got someone said to me the other day, um, uh, mate, what's Gavin really like? I said, listen, I'll tell you what he's really like. I looked up the stairs the day my brother was getting buried, and he looked like he was the first person waiting. I said, that's all I've got to say. That's all I've got to say. And Gav, you've just told me you and your firm have had the best 6 months of business since you've been opening up. But you said that not showing off. You actually were talking to me beforehand and you're telling me how hard it is narrowing the gap, getting vendors and buyers on the same page. But regardless, there's volume out there, isn't there, Gav?
I think there's opportunity out there, and I think that like this is the sort of climate for the best to become great, right? Which is an opportunity that I relish. It's an opportunity that everyone at the firm at TRG is excited by. We know how to swim with the current, but I also think it's a climate that's gonna, kill off a lot of people in the industry who have had it easy for a long period of time. Like we quiz a lot of the top performing agents in our Monday morning sales meetings, which don't drag on. They last for 10 or 15 minutes. Whoever's had a good week, I kind of put them on the spot and unpack every one of their sales and what they did. And so what we are noticing is like buyer work is becoming really important in terms of getting deals done. We're noticing expired listings are a huge stream of revenue because agents have had these properties who actually don't know how to sell them. We're picking up, we're selling them. And then what ties in with that is probably the third other really important point is really open and honest communication with your vendor and with your client, right? And that's the reason we're picking these up, because the agent initially did not have that sort of open, honest communication with their client. And we do, and it seems to be making all of the difference. But doing that stuff ain't easy. If it was, everyone will do it. It's hard to get it together out there. Nothing we can't do and do in spades, but definitely tougher for sure.
I asked Gavin, Nick, before we came on, out of everything that's happened in real estate, when he looks at one of the happiest times in award season, he said it would have been the year that both I got number one principal and Ollie got Oliver Lavers got number one sales agent. And I can see why you said it, Gavin, because this guy here, it was like he was with you, was it 5 years before he went out on his own?
Longer.
Oh,
He was with me 10 years, and he went out on his own now 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Oh no, so you're right. Yeah. So he was with me five odd years before he went out on his own. Yeah. Yeah.
can I ask before we move on, because today we're going to talk about the team behind the team. And, I'm just delighted, Gav, that I'm going to have the opportunity to interview you at that great conference, Profit, which is being held next Thursday, which, by the way, everyone, this is officially now the largest number of people that have gone to a leadership conference in the history of real estate. At the moment, it's tracking for 600 people. Some of the people that are going to be speaking there, apart from Gavin, Anthony Bell, John McGrath, Phil Harris, of course, John Bell, Nick, you're also being part of it there, assisting me throughout the day. And I'm pretty pumped and excited because on that day, you're going to cover a lot more content.
Yeah.
But today, Gav, I want to ask you, Wingman has a very important role in your business, but it hasn't taken the role of what you do that's critical. And I'm just curious, what are the things that you say, Wingman, I'm not touching. This is my baby. I do this day in, day out. What are those things?
So it's kind of two part. I mean, the first part is it's a huge help in our property management business. And I know that may not apply to everybody who's in sales. I know mainly business owners and property management agents will relish it and see huge opportunity with it. I know Jerome couldn't live without it. In fact, I actually did a podcast with the guys and talking to John and Nick about their growth and their personal journey and seeing the impressive things that they have done. I've actually got Jerome to fly out to Brisbane to chat to them in more depth so we can grow our business as much as we possibly can and learn from them. So that's the first part. The second part is they are, and look, it depends what level you're at, Tommy. Like if you're 0 to 500, you may have different requirements than if you're 500 to a mil, and if you're 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on. But at my level, right, it's the combination of when we've got such crazy volume and things are spinning at a very high level, Wingman plays the role of being the team behind my team as such. So it's not necessarily that I deal with them personally, but you've got Montana, who runs my admin operations and pretty much wears 10 different other hats, who has that resource available to her. And, I'm told it runs very smoothly, right? If it wasn't, I'm usually told when there's a problem. When there's no problem, I know things are running smoothly. So I call them the team behind my team. And of course, super valuable in the PM space as well.
Um, a lot of the people that are on this webinar, I think about 140, and there's a lot more that are registered, and you know what webinars are like. Some people show up, others don't show up, others watch it on repeat, some never watch it, but we're going to make the assumption there's going to be at least another 200 people that are going to watch it. So 340 people out of the 340, I reckon, Gav, that there's probably 80% of those people probably here are either a principal or they're a sales agent, and even the principals are selling agents. Most of them, like yourself, you're a director's EBU, right? So I want to ask, if you were an agent alone, how would you use Wingman? If you're an agent writing, say 500, 600, 700, how would you use Wingman?
I would use them for everything that wasn't dollar productive related, right? So, it's interesting because that everyone has a different interpretation of what that is. So I think as an agent or a practitioner, you got to work out what's the stuff that really brings in the dollars for me. Is that meeting with top buyers? Is that building relationships? Is that listing presentations? Is that knocking on doors? Whatever the case may be, whatever that looks like, focus and dedicate your time, energy, and attention just to those aspects and avenues of your business, and everything else. And as you know, in real estate, I could sit here and list 200 tasks, right, that are almost admin based related, but still need to be done at a high level, particularly when they're connecting with the client. I would farm that out to Wingman and essentially get someone from the company to train them how you like it being done, which I know Montana spent some time doing. But collectively as a team, I think they can be very beneficial on that basis. The dollar productive stuff you as an agent handle, the non-dollar productive but necessary tasks, farm that out.
So I'm going to echo and extend on what you've just said, Gavin. When I talk to all the clients that use Wingman in my real estate gym, I find that the ones that are doing more than 100 deals a year or are writing 1.5 million and over, they say this to me: Tom, Wingman does everything except look for my next listing, go to my next appraisal, sit with a buyer and put a deal together, or sit with my vendor and educate them on this is what's happening in the market. This is what I think you should be doing with your marketing and your price at the moment. Unless they're doing one of those four things, they feel that they're not being income producing and that they keep palming it off. So what you're saying sounds along the lines of them. But I know, Gav, because I know I've dealt with you, I've worked with you for so many years. It's decades, it's not years now. And I know you've got this high standard, like you would be obsessive, even about the font or anything in a brand or how photos and videos look. So I'm just curious about the client experience that you've had. Has anything been coming up where people feel, oh, it's dropped? I wouldn't think so.
I think, look, nothing's perfect in this world. Like whether it's offshore, whether it's onshore, like the like I've got people who've been working in my team for 2-3 years, and weekly, sometimes daily, talking to them about how we can refine what we do in order to be better. And that's the fastidious nature of, I guess, my style and approach, which some people can find annoying. And to be honest, even I find it annoying, but I can't help it because it's who I am. But like I said, Monty and I have worked with our guys at Wingman to make sure that they do it in the way that we like. And that takes a bit of time, but whether it's offshore or onshore, it takes a bit of time anyway. You've got to make the investment. Remember, it's a third of the price. So it's worthwhile once you get them to do it in the style that you like. And when and if there is an odd or rare occasion where there's a mistake, refine it. Let them know. And look, unless they've put the best guys onto us, we haven't had any major, crashes or crazy issues with it.
Nick, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. Um, I want to ask you, you know how there are various, we've got markets. So Gavin works in a high value market, and many would say it's a high value but lower turnover market than, say, Blacktown, which has got a low value but a high turnover market. What's your experience with Wingman working in different markets? Like Gav's median price, I mean, off the top of my head, I reckon it'd probably be around 4 or 5 mil. Is that what it is, Gav? Up 6, 7? Wow. Okay. So the bottom line is, if you're in Blacktown, you're going to have to sell 10 houses, right? Gavin will sell one. That's the short summary of what it is, right? They're all laughing. Luke,
The short
look at Luke.
summary
Luke's,
on the front.
Luke's laughing. Luke's got on a seek.com. He's looking in the east and the north shore, right? So what's your experience, Nick, with, yeah,
I think it doesn't really matter what marketplace you're working in. It's actually you have to bring it internally, and it's what do you want to achieve. So, for example, you just mentioned if you're in Blacktown, you need to sell 10 houses to Gavin's one, but an agent that's selling 10 to 1 homes might want a different client experience. So I know working with Gavin, he's absolutely obsessed with not only the client experience, but exceeding the client's experiences every time, which is one of the reasons why he's been one of the best agents in the country for such a long period of time, and why the clients keep coming back to him. So actually tailoring a solution for TRG or for Gavin's way that he wants to do it is very, very different to an agent who's starting off. It doesn't matter what marketplace. So the task list that we have for Gavin's team is very, very different to potentially an agent that's working in a competitor's office next to Gavin. So that's one of the things that we do. We like to get under the hood and understand what the agent wants to achieve or what the office wants to achieve, and we can tailor a solution to fit that.
Nick, can I ask you on property management? Because I had the other day, Liam from Byron Bay, which I put onto you. They often ask me, right, like, what are the main stuff that a wingman person in Manila can do in PM, right? They often feel like the initial feeling is people saying, "No, man, I need to be able to speak to them at the next table," right? Tell me, what's the main role description of a PM wingman person working in the Philippines?
I can actually answer it the other way. So what should a property manager be doing in Australia? So a property manager in Australia, all they should be doing is building a relationship with the landlord and dealing with escalated issues. That's literally all they should be doing. Everything else should be stripped away and given to someone else, whether that be onshore or offshore, depending on the style of office, what they want to achieve. But if you're in new business, you should just be prospecting, listing, selling, or prospecting and signing managements. Everything else should be stripped away. In property management, all you should be doing is building relationships with the landlords and dealing with escalated issues. Everything else.
You're muted. You're muted, Nick. Just unmute. Sorry, you just muted that last few seconds. So basically, it's a little bit like sales. And what you're saying is that essentially what you're saying is divisions of labor, make sure that you're not focused in non-dollar productive activity. And do you find that offshore can achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we one of the reasons why we actually have the academy. One of the reasons why we're training them in property management, why we're training them in sales operations, and that's why they're working so well in EBUs and property management businesses across Australia.
Okay. Gavin, I want to ask you, did you notice at all since rates have gone down, has there been any change whatsoever in the economic landscape from buyers or sellers? Too early to call?
I reckon it's been like, I think it's been seriously tumultuous since probably August last year. Like, I'm not noticing a difference today versus August. I feel like the market changes, and correct me if you think, or you're hearing different. I think last week is different to this week. I can't quite decipher or identify any particular pattern or trend. You know, like it's definitely not that frothy, crazy where you've got 10 buyers going nuts who will pay anything and everything just to secure it that it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. But I still think stock is relatively tight, particularly in my market, like good choices, good options. There's a bit of shit around, but like the good stuff is selling really well. And I think you've got to know how to duck, weave, like I say, communicate, eliminate all excuses vendors may have through the process. And that is becoming as fine as, like, you know, whether it's tasks, customer expectation, the marketing, spelling, photo order, timing on doing what you say you were going to do, like really, really basic stuff. If that's not done, it's going to be very hard to have that conversation with the vendor about, you know, getting realistic.
So, Gav, at AREC 4 or 5 years ago, you had a beautiful. There are two sentences I remember from you on stage. The first one is, you've got to close the door of excuses. And this happened on Saturday because I got there, I met the vendor. There was already a relationship because there's a connection through social media. He opened up and he started complaining about the fact that the first week of the open, what had happened is he was not happy with something in the advert. When the property didn't sell afterwards, he
It
just
was the fault. It was because of the advert.
yeah, he just patted me. He goes, "It's not your fault." He goes, "What do you expect with that?" And I'm thinking to myself, exactly that. Every vendor will look at every reason except for the price.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure that there is no other reason, because if there is, you can't win that battle. And then the second thing you've said, which I've plagiarized and I say it over and over again, at some point in your life, if you're going to have an elf business, effortless, lucrative, and fun, you've got to be the prospected one, not the one that prospects all the time. And I saw that with my own eyes in Sylvania waters that day. So, Nick, listen to what happens. I'm sitting in the living room about to start an auction. We were there 15, 20 minutes early. I don't do Gavin's auctions. This was a one-off in the St. George, in the Sylvania waters area. And there's a guy hovering around. And it was like, it was a bit like a guy hovering to get an autograph or something. And I just looked at this guy, right? And then I thought, he comes on. Do you remember the moment, Gavin, we're talking about? He comes on over, Nick, and he turns around and he goes, "Listen, I've got this property, and I mean, I know that you're not in the area, but I think if you see this price." So he has started trying to convince Gavin at least come out and give me an appraisal. It's bizarre. Like it's always the other way around. And I think when you talk about being the prospected one versus the prospector, it's all about brand, marketing, a magnet, profile, already winning the interview before there is an interview because they're just aware of it. Gav, does that happen a lot sometimes, or was that like Tom? It was that's once a year. You were just there at the right time.
No. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. But that's not to take anything away from like the crazy level of hustle that you need to have, particularly when you get through the door, because it's not like, even if someone wants me to come over and give them my view on, you know, how to sell, maximize the price and what I would do, like 9 out of 10 times they're seeing 3 other agents, irrespective of how excited that they may be. And so that's like, and people forget how many facets of the process as a real estate agent you've actually got to hit on. That's just one of the many facets, is getting through the door and being able to pitch. Then it's about, how do I show this vendor, you know, that I'm 100% the best person for the job? And that's not through cutting my fees and cutting my marketing plan, because that's essentially how you do a great job, or part of the tools that you use to do the great job. So that's the second part of the process. And then you've got to convince them, once you've left an impression, because they're probably seeing 2 or 3 other people after, right up into the sharp end of signing an agency agreement, right? Because no matter how good a salesperson, salesman, saleswoman you are, you can't make a sale without the listing. Then now it's not, like I said, what it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. There's real strategy, expertise, conditioning that needs to be applied through the process to be able to maximize the sell price, right? So it's a whole process. I actually think in this climate, not only should we, I think we should be paying more. I think there should be zero pressure on fees, in my opinion. And like, I've walked away from a lot of business in the last 6 months, 12 months because of that, because I know what I'm putting into each transaction. I know, I have a real belief in the value of what I add to a process. And so I give it blood, sweat, and tears, every single one. And I like to be fairly remunerated for that. If I don't do a job, I don't deserve shit. But if I do the job and at a high level, I feel like I deserve to be fairly remunerated for that. And the excuse thing is imperative too. Like, I had one of my agents talk about a sale that he made last week in a really tough and tight street, like really tough, without mentioning names. It's one of the toughest streets to sell in my area. And when himself and the owners of that property met at the listing, they jointly thought, based on what it offered, because it was a special property but in a tough spot, it would be worth somewhere around 12 million bucks. And 4 or 5 weeks later, where they landed at with the sale was around 10 and a quarter, 10.5, something like that. Now, it was still, if not the highest, the second highest price ever paid on this street. Okay, so it was still an amazing result. And these guys were thrilled. It was a bit of a tough process getting there, but they were thrilled when the property was sold. He eliminated every single excuse and genuinely, hand on heart, did everything that he possibly could to get that result. I know what he puts into his practice. I know the competition. And if they put 6 or 7 out of 10 into what they can control, he puts 12 out of 10. So when he was talking to me through that process and being somewhat stressed out about the pressure they were putting on him, I kept saying, and this is the truth, and not everyone can say this, but I know him. I said, I know what you're bringing to the table. These other guys aren't going to do it. Just remembering your worth and what you're actually doing. And this is not a real estate delusional approach whereby I've just put a board out the front, I'm going to wave a magic wand and hope it sells, and I'm not doing shit. I'm just standing on my phone at the open homes. I'm not being proactive around selling it. Like, I know what he does. And he told me, he said, seriously, on the first inspection, we had 30 groups that rocked up. It's a tight street. There was no parking. So from there, I decided to open up twice on a Saturday, twice on a Thursday. So the vendors knew there wasn't going to be any issues with parking. Like, this is just one example of many things he did. And he's a multi-million-dollar agent, right? And his view is, I will do everything I can to eliminate excuses and get my vendors the absolute best price. And I wholly believe if the vendors see that, if the vendors feel that, if the vendors know that, not 10 out of 10, because we get some crazy ones, and I deal with that myself, but if they see that the agent is going out of their way to be as productive as they can and do everything they can within their control to maximize their value and fight for them, those are the agents that are going to win in this climate. It's harder. It's going to be harder. So you've got to, every tool in your box, you've got to give it more and more and more.
That's one thing I've noticed too, Tom and Gav, is some of the best agents across the country, they've got that inner belief that they're actually adding value to the vendor, to the transaction. It's not arrogance. It's an actual belief that they are going to add value, whether it be from a marketing perspective, negotiating, whatever that is. And to Gav's point, they're the agents that I think are going to win moving forward and have been winning for many, many years.
I think, Nick, on that, I was actually having a conversation with a guy on the Central Coast and on a session before, and I actually said to him, don't feel like you're interrupting people. If you feel, we were talking about chasing stuff. He goes, oh, I don't want to feel like I'm harassing him. And I said, well, here's the deal. If you don't, and they go with someone else, if you think that you're going to get them a better price, you're doing them a favor. You're not harassing them. So you're actually being negligent. You're being negligent. But I just can't help, Nick, because I'm looking at a question here that's come from Vicky Sayers. And I actually do want to show what an EBU structure looks like, because I know that a lot of them that are on here are curious. So what I'm going to do is just show you at a high level, what does a good EBU structure look like? And you're going to need an EBU, because if you want to start getting at Gav's level, you've got to start looking black belt and above. 2 to 15 million in real estate is all about the team. However, for most people that are watching this, they're not at that team. They're probably hovering around the 5 to 700. And this is what your team's got to look like, where the lead agent has these activities that they're doing, which does not have cold prospecting. It's all warm prospecting and working with hot buyers. But this is the role, Nick, that I think is a critical role that Wingman fills very well, as Gavin said. Not only is it a third of the price, I actually find it's probably the significant thing about it is the attention to detail because of the value of keeping their job. Keeping a job overseas is more important than keeping a job in Australia, because in Australia there's other jobs, less so in Manila and the Philippines in general. So here's what I see a Wingman person doing: a lot of firework diary emails, helping with all the admin, and also doing a lot of price updates, whether you're using Realtair or any of the others, pumping those away. They can actually be part of your team. And I know that because I'm the scientist and the subject. Even on this Zoom right now, my PA, VA, virtual assistant, or we call them remote professionals, from the Philippines, Princess, she's on here. She has a work in progress meeting this every morning with me and with the other team members, right? But this is the role that you probably won't have a Wingman person doing, which is the prospecting, the callbacks, the buyer work, and they probably won't be going to anything that is client facing. But in fact, this, Nick and Gavin, I find this and property management appear to be the things that take people away from that core four activities that really matters in real estate. And I've got to tell you, those of you that haven't booked already for the Profit Conference, Susan, can you please put in the chat box the URL? Gav, I'm going to be pumped not only just to hear what you've got to say. I do like seeing you, right? And we don't see each other as much as we.
Miss me, cool, man. I miss you too. I don't hear from you. Where's the love?
Yeah. So, but we're going to have the big reunited party on Thursday, and guess what, Gav? It's exactly in the same room that you had What It Takes.
Oh, I saw.
It's in the same. It's a cool venue. Gav, the last thing I was going to ask you is, we got a federal election coming up on or before the 17th of May, right? I want you to think back over the last couple of decades. What's a federal election do for volume of stock, and what's a federal election do with buyer behavior? Do they put a pause on it, and if yes, for how long?
Sometimes 4 weeks leading up. The problem or the concern with that is, post the election, if there's an influx of stock, I'm more focused on supply and demand than I am with regard to politics and government in my market anyway. I can only speak in my market, and it's kind of it's the luxury market, right? Got an office in Hunters Hill, office in Wallara, office in Rose Bay. So it's heavily governed by supply and demand majorly, in my opinion. Now, interest rates, elections, all of these things improve sentiment, which naturally impedes on or has an effect on deal flow. So there can be some positive flow on from that. But where the negative can kick in is if a lot of property all of a sudden hits the market and there's an influx, because then buyers have lots of choice. And when buyers have choice, they tend to compromise less, just based on my experience.
Okay. Well, I'm pumped. Gavin Rubinstein, another real estate agent that is part of the Wingman support group. So's Phil Harris.
Yep.
Tony O'Doherty. Coombs.
Alex
Jordan.
The list goes on.
The list goes on. Success leaves clues, ladies and gentlemen. And I've got to tell you, at less than 25 grand a human being, I believe that is a no-brainer. Gav, really looking forward to seeing you next Thursday. Nick Georges, great to see you. I want to let everyone know the link Susan has put in the chat box. We'll also put it on social media. And team, sun's out, guns out. Let's go out there. Let's serve the people.
There you guys.
Thank you.